without further ado, we will begin here, and then we will introduce our two friends. Okay, so we thank you for this morning. Thank you for young us on here. I'll pray for those on the way, soon. So today, as we discuss this thing that matters to our hearts as Christians so much in church, so we pray that you will trust, guide us, and we also use my two good friends here to share the insights and journeys as well. That's this time. Okay, so last month, right, I asked my two CG mates, Chris and Sharon, to share a bit of romance. So this month, I have my another two CG mates. Okay, Josh is Sharon's husband, and then Shumeng is my CGL from this year onwards. Okay, you all may have heard me about my previous CGL are the ones who I stayed with. They just got kicked. So now they pass the baton on to this man here. In my CG, we call him the great leader. Someone came out with it, so we call him the great leader today. Okay, so anyway, so Julian will share first, and then John will share. Okay, and then you'll get to know them a bit better. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so he told me to share a little bit on my reflections as a working adult. So I've worked for around 4 years. Later I'll talk about what I studied and so what I work. So today I just plan to introduce, first I'll introduce myself, then I will share a bit on my journey with work and church, and then also some of my reflections on how my perception of church has changed. Actually, can you guys come a bit closer? It feels so that it's a bit more cozier.
Today is a bit shy.
Maybe can all you just shift your chair slightly closer so that it feels more homely. Yeah. I mean, since it's a small crowd today, right? Camera?
On the camera here.
Why need the camera here?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah. Okay, so I will try to stay as much on point on the slides because I have a tendency to ramble if not. Okay, so Sean, if I'm starting to ramble, you will stop me and okay. So okay, so I graduated in 2017 from NTU. How many of you are from? Well, everyone is from NTU, NUS. Everyone, okay, except for one and two. You don't count, sorry. So I graduated from chemical engineering. Then after, if you notice, after like around 6 months, then I managed to find a job. So the journey to find it, I was 6 months, I couldn't find a job. In fact, I started even earlier because usually we start around year 3, sem 2, or year 4, sem 1, right? So I spent actually close to 1 year looking for a job. And then finally, I found a job at REC Solar after many interviews, many sending out resumes. And then I've worked there since for around 4 years. You want to say anything else on this? Oh yes, okay. So a bit of my Christian journey, so that's perspective. I'm a second-gen Christian. My parents, they came to Christ before me. Then, I mean, ever since then, they brought me to church. So I was in church since I was very young. How many of you are second-gen Christians? Or how many of you are first-gen Christians? There's only one. Okay. So then you guys understand a bit of what it means to second. So I think for the most part of my early life, which means all the way until like NS and uni, I think church to me was an obligation. I went because my parents told me to do so. I also went because to some degree I understood that I was flawed and I needed salvation. So one of the things that my parents, who were also new Christians at the time when I was younger, was that every night you need to pray, ask for forgiveness of your sins, because if you suddenly die at night, then you're going to hell. I mean, so that's a misconception altogether, but my understanding of Christianity and of God had an element of guilt in it, of not being able to meet expectations or standards, right? So but that's only when I entered university and I decided, okay, you know what, I'm kind of like, I'm in church because my parents told me to do so. So it's kind of like my parents' religion. And I decided, okay, in university, I'll spend the 4 years and I will really consider Christianity, ask the difficult questions and see if I still want to be a Christian or whether this is not for me. Then at least I don't feel like I'm stuck in between two boats, right? Either be enthusiastic about it or I just walk away altogether, right? So that is the backdrop of this. And then after that, yeah. So a little bit of my perception of church back then. So back then being during my NS before that, and also a little bit at the start of my university life as well. So before working, essentially. To me, it was a place to be on Sundays. So I just went there beautifully. Actually, actually a lot of my friends, they after a while, as they grew older, they start to leave church around the youth period. Somehow I stuck around through, I don't know, I'm not sure why. But I see that now that there was the hand of God keeping me inside for some reason. It was a place for me to meet friends. And my understanding of what church was my friends, my group of friends, right? I mean, of course, I understand there's older people around, there's the kids running around, but then to me, it was my peers, those around the same age as me. And so when they started to leave one by one, right, my attachment to church was kind of, it started to weaken, right? Because the friend, if church is just a friend and the friends disappear from church, then church is no longer there. But somehow, by the grace of God, I stayed around in church. Also, I mentioned I had a bit of like a guilty relationship with God. So it was kind of like, okay, God, I come to church, I worship you once a week, and then that gives me some peace in my heart because I have done my duty per se. I mentioned this before. So okay. So at around the time when I think somewhere in between during my NS phase, my pastor decided, okay, you know what, we're just going to take a bunch of people around the same age, we're going to form a cell group, and we're going to throw you inside that, and then you start your new life. Okay, sorry, we call it a care group. I'm going to refer to it as CG for short. So they threw us all into this cell group, and I was there with a bunch of other people whom I kind of knew because, I mean, I've been in church for 18 years, right? So you kind of know people, but at the same time, you don't really know them because I focused my vision of church at the time before that was on the friends I had, people around the same age. Particularly, it was just a bunch of guys. So when I was put in this new cell group, it was, well, to say it was awkward was is understatement. So I attended cell church. I still stuck around somehow, and from retrospect, I saw that as the grace of God putting me through, and also through many people who came and went, encouraged me along the way, even though at that point in time, it wasn't very much, but then somehow I still stuck around long enough to be where I am today. So it was awkward. And at that time, I realized it was awkward for me because I didn't know everyone very well. But like years later, when we started talking about it, that's after we became good friends, the rest of members, myself. That's actually, at that time, we also felt very awkward. We were all just there because the pastor told us to do so, and because somehow we believed that they had a vague understanding that this was what God wanted for us as a church to commit to a gathering of believers, and so we stuck around for that period. To give you an idea of how God was, we had to organize the icebreaker sessions every week. It was that bad. So when like some of my CG mates brought like their future partners in the CG, I was like, what are these guys doing? Why are they doing icebreakers? Because we were not friends. We were just there because of the structure placed. But I think, and also in retrospect, I realized that those years when we were around, and those years being like the NS and also moving into university, leading up to working life, right? I think that was laying down a foundation for us, a foundation of a routine. So we got used to coming to it. And a foundation of relationships, not yet friendships, but the beginning of deep relationships that got us used to sharing about life, about difficult things as well. And also that, I think also played a huge role in when we started all moving into the working world. And that's when things were a bit turbulent, at least for the first few years for me, quite a number of us actually. That seems to be a common experience when people start working. The first few years are a bit turbulent, guess you get adjusted to it. So so the transition into working life, right? So I must tell you before that before I started work, I had a dread of working. I did not look forward to working at all because to me it was like university was okay. I wake up at 9, wake up at 10 to go to class, right? If I don't want to, and NTU there was online lectures back then. So okay, we just watch a recording. If I don't want to wake up early, right? But then I saw work as this place where shucks, there's like structures you have to obey. It suddenly becomes like the national service all over again, where you wake up in the morning and then do things. And also it's like no escape because that's what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, right? You still need to feed yourself, so you need to do it. But you don't I did not like it. I did not look forward to it. And also, like I mentioned, I spent around 1 year looking for it. It was okay when I was still in university, but after I graduated and started looking, and I couldn't find a job for a few months, it started to grate on me a lot. I'm not sure. Well, I hope you guys don't go through that, but my parents were understanding, but at the same time, they also hinted to me that hey, maybe you should look a bit harder for your job. I mean, I was looking hard for a job already, but then they told me that. So it's also a bit irritating as well. So I was quite wary about it. But finally, I found a job. Someone, like one of the companies which I sent a resume for, suddenly just called me, hey, would you like to come down for interview? We have this. So I went down, did the interview. They said, okay, we are okay with you. We'd like to sign on. Yes, I joined. So I at the point in time, I thought, okay, finally there's a job, right? Okay, anything to do, just get out of the house. Maybe I just do it for 1 year and then I'll just sell. But then it was only later on that I started to realize that this was where God actually placed me to be, because he very clearly for this one, he opened the door for me all the way. So opened the door in the sense that first the interview, second, I found very good bosses there, bosses who, although had very high expectations of me, they also spent a lot of effort and time in investing in me. But it wasn't easy because especially the first 2 years, it was terrible. I remember like coming for cell group, and then I told my members, I felt like this week I was on the boat the whole way and there was a storm, and then finally I'm just out of the storm. And that was not just 1 week, it was just week after week after week after week. It was quite bad. I just elaborate a bit on why it was bad for me. It was there was a cultural shock of work. Like first the structures. For my job, right, I had to wake up at 5:30 every day to catch the company bus, go all the way to Tuas South, which is right at the end of the tip of Singapore, and then that's where my company is. So from waking up at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever time I wanted to, waking up at 5:30 every day, that time also no work from home. My company is a manufacturing plant, so I had to be there physically. Well, that was physical tiredness. At the end of every day, right, I would just be so drained, like mentally and physically. It's like, because like it's crap, I have to keep learning to be something. I face expectations of my bosses, and then so I was pushing myself, people were pushing me. So at the end of every day, I was like, wow, I'm so done. Then once I sit on the company bus, right, I just kill straight away because I can't take it anymore. Like there was also the frustration because although my bosses were good to me, right, my direct supervisor, he was taking like subordinate for the first time, and he was a PhD graduate. So he was very, very brilliant, but the thing is he was able to make a lot of logical leaps which I could not catch up with. So he would think of something 3 steps, and then I'm like, how come you are at 3 steps? But then he didn't really explain the in-between steps. So it was very frustrating for me because I was like, I didn't catch what he was trying to teach me. Yeah. So then the question then is, where was the church at that point in time, right? So this is a bit of my reflection on it. I realized that at the time, okay, my understanding of church at the point in time was still the CG, still not the wider church organization, but rather still focused on CG. So for me, the CG was a place, a rest house to come in every Friday. I mentioned just now that in university and before, it was building a routine of coming. So this still stuck with me. I still come for Fridays, even though I was very tired. And I believe that it helped a lot as an anchor for myself. Because if not for the cell group, I'm not sure whether I'll be a Christian today or not. Because the tendency to look inwards when you are under great pressure is very normal as a human being. I mean, even in university or exams, right? People just disappear from church to study. So it's very normal. But at the same time, prolonged periods of that is not healthy for your faith at all. I think being around fellow believers, right, helped to remind me of what was important. Like Hebrews 12, like since you're surrounded by so great a crowd of witnesses, let's lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let's run with endurance the race that's set for. So I think being around believers helps to remind us that we are in a race, that we shouldn't give up, but we should continue on. So just meeting out with people has that kind of effect. Also, that I think the sharing of, remember I mentioned just now that we were starting to get used to like share more openly about struggles. I think that very sharing of struggles and also sharing of victories, right, helps to comfort us and give us encouragement throughout, right? So First, 2 Corinthians, like God who comforts us enables us to comfort others. So when I'm struggling through this, I get comfort, I get over it, God has comforted me, and I can empathize and help other people, such other church members, other cell group members go through the same struggle or these struggles of the same type. Okay, have I gone? Okay. So now I'll just share a bit of how my perception of church has changed from before working to like after working. So on one point is that from a place where I go to on Friday and Sunday, right, it starts to become a community that I'm committed to. That's largely because I witnessed, even in the years where I stuck around in cell group in church, even though I did not quite understand why I was there, or even though I did not quite, it wasn't my biggest desire to come for cell group. But as I stuck along, I started to see like the blessings that God that follows obedience. In Hebrews 10, right, it tells us that we should not give up the practice of meeting together, right? And that we should continue to spur each other, encourage other all the more. This is like looking back. I realized that when we obeyed the commandment of God, even though we didn't have a very solid idea of what church was at the point in time, it was just, you know, God tells me to come to church, so I'll come to church, but no understanding behind that. But even as we obeyed, right, there was blessings that, like, I think we all saw victories in our struggles and work. I think we got people got more competent, more confident in their in themselves. I think, and also from that, right, from a bunch of like awkward people, right, I think I got some very deep relationships from that, people whom I can share life with quite openly, without filtering like what is socially acceptable to say in a community and what not. So that was something that I got from it, and because of that, I realized that all the more that the importance of obeying the word of honoring God to come to committing to a church. And also I started to recognize that the church is the family of God. So it's not just the building itself that we come to every week. It is the people, the community that commits itself to meeting every week. And as people turn from strangers, from friends to family, then it's not so much a matter of, okay, you know, if I'm not happy with this church, I leave the church, but rather, hey, this family, I believe God has placed me here for a reason. So I stay around, I help to encourage help out with the rest of the church, right? I mean, it's the same as with family. Like you don't just, I mean, there's estranglement, but then family is something which you stick around with, right? Even if you don't like them. Oops. I think also another thing that changed for me was the perception of who church is. In a sense, at the start, it was a close group of friends to me. That was who church was to me. Then as I grew older and I started to join the cell group, it became the cell group. And in the cell group, right, there were actually older people. So that was my first, that was when I started to form like my first deep relationships with people older than me, excluding my parents. So, and although in university, I didn't really, I mean, they were there, they helped to give encouragement, they helped to help us to understand the Bible when we were stuck there arguing each other. I didn't really pay attention to them that much until I started to go into work. I think that was because when you start to work, right, you realize the full effects of Genesis 3, which is the thorns and thistles of working, of living. And I think when you look at the older people in church that have run the race so far ahead, as in who have been running before you, right, and you realize that they're stuck around with it despite all the thorns and thistles and all the troubles and sufferings they go through. That is actually realize, wow, it's quite amazing. But before that, you don't appreciate it, because life is, at least for me, it was easier before work. Also, I think you get shared, you start to share. For me, I felt my empathy towards like those before me increased because now there's a shared experience, which is working life. No matter the kind of jobs, industries, the experience, and the sufferings that inevitably comes with it from the curse, it unites. In a sense, it gives us a unity. Okay. And also, then finally, where I am now, I'm starting to see church as not just the cell group, but also the wider organization, meaning the older people, even the younger people. So in what I work, right, I had the opportunity to guide new colleagues, as well as to help like interns meaning those from poly, from university. So I think that has given me a taste of the joys of teaching and guiding people younger than me, like drawing from my own experience. Even though I'm 4 years of not that experience, but experience enough to at least provide some guidance. And that also likewise also allows me to look at church and say, hey, I can acknowledge that there are people who are younger in the faith than me, and how can I help them as well? All right, how can I enable them to keep on running? Okay, lastly, there's a change in agenda from when I go to church, from receiving to giving. This is something relatively new for me. When I realized that that in the past I used to come to church, come to cell group with attitude of, oh, I'm so tired, I'm just going to sit there, I'm just going to listen to what you have to say to me, I'm just going to receive it. But there's a gradual, I think for me there's a gradual change in that, hey, now what can I do to give back, right? What can I do to use the gifts that God has given me to bless others, just as others have blessed me in the past? And also, how can I be more like Christ? Because in Mark, it says that the Son of Man did not come to serve, but come to be served, but to serve, right? So how can I emulate him more as I progress in my Christ-like maturity? So, what is church to me today? What does church mean to me today at this point in time? It's not fixed because I'm still relatively young. The road before me is still quite long, and as I mature in Christ, I think my perception of church will also mature. But for me right now, I believe there is a community of believers united in Christ. And what does being united in Christ mean? I think it means to share a common commitment to follow and to obey Christ. And one of the ways that manifests in obedience is to regularly meet up with one another, and not just to talk and enjoy each other's presence, but also to encourage, to edify, to pray, to worship God together. And through this, right, you allow the Spirit to work in us to better mold us into the building, the body of Christ that God envisioned. Yeah. Okay, the end. Any questions now or later? Okay, cool.
To me, when I first hit join this church only for the only guy who kind of like, hey, how are you? What's the day? Then everybody else still awkward. Okay. Inside Josh.
You want to put this on?
Inside there. One is
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to sit down. Hello. Yes, okay. Thanks, Chuming, for sharing. My sharing has a little bit less to do with work, but more of like my own personal journey and what church means to me. Yeah, so let's go. So I think like similarly to most of you all, right? Like I grew up in a second-gen Christian household. So my background is I was from Toa Payoh Methodist, and then my parents are very conservative Christians. So like when I say conservative, I mean like, you know, no clapping to the music, no swaying, no speaking in tongues. Yeah. So that's kind of my background lah. Yeah, and then in Toa Payoh, I also served in youth ministry and the worship ministry, and I was like a CGL for a short while. So yeah, and I guess in the early years, it just kind of felt like the right thing to do, or you know, the thing that you sort of naturally do in your sort of Christian life, right? So like, you know, then continue to serve. You don't think much about, I mean, sometimes you do why you do it, or like what's the purpose of it, but I mean, you see your older youths like doing it, and then it's like it just felt natural, and then you don't really think much about why. So that's kind of what happened to me. Yeah, then I'll just fast forward to uni days. So uni, yes. So in uni, I joined VCF. As a joke, I was like messaging my friends when I joined. It's like, oh, I'm gonna find a wife. Yeah. So yeah, that that was my motivation. Yeah, but I think in CF I started serving in a ministry. So it was, we sort of like went to, so I was from arts, and then we sort of went to computing to start the ministry there lah. Yeah. So I spent a lot of my time in that ministry, and I think it was there where I actually developed a lot of my how would I say, few of my closest friendships lah. So up to today, we still talk quite a bit. Yeah, but it also was at this point in time, there was like a sort of a critical turning point in my life. So at the same time, I was serving in uni, I was serving in church. I kind of had a little bit of crisis of faith lah. And this crisis of faith kind of, okay, so how it kind of started was, as a history student, I sort of started to see Jesus, things in the Bible as more historical events, and then, you know, started to question, and I just went down this slippery slope. And then I felt like, hey, I could live without church, I could live without God. Hey, it felt good. Yeah. So I just like went on my own way a little bit. But also at the same time, right, I was kind of like falling into this little spiral of semi-depression, not fully clinical, but also it was quite serious that the people around me could see lah. Yeah, so in the CF ministry we were serving, we were sort of tagged to like ministry friends. So people from the exco will sort of like, you know, reach out once in a while. So these two girls, Shuan and Jasmine, they were like, hey, are you okay? Your face is like, you know, I think they could see from my face lah. Yeah, so I was like spiraling, and then at the same time, the close people whom I was serving with, they left for exchange, and I didn't go for exchange. So, you know, then my support system just crashed. So it was really bad time for me lah. Everything was just crashed, and I started running away from church. So if you see this image of, do you know where this place is? This is the NLB. So the story of the NLB is this.
Library. Yep. more precise.
Yes, yes. So the story of NLB is, so like I mentioned, I grew up in a second gen family, right? So my church, the Pi Methodist, has two services, 8:30 and 11:30. So my parents attended the 8:30 service. So usually if they come home from 8:30 service and they see me at home, then they'll be like, hey, what are you doing here? You never go to church. So what do? I just ran out of the house, make sure to leave before they come home around 10, 11 o'clock, and I'll run to NLB to study and to like do my own stuff. Yeah, so like, I think Chumi mentioned like there was this point he said that, no, he felt this guilty obligation to God to go to church. For me, it was this guilty obligation to my parents. Yeah, so I was like, I'll be running away to NLB every week. Yeah. But of course, this couldn't go on. I mean, as the depression, I wouldn't use the word depression, like this despair kind of spiraled, and it became quite obvious. And I'm very thankful, like God really sent people to surround me and to encourage me. So like I mentioned, one of the girls, Shuan, right? Let me see. So she wrote a note in the deck in the NUS canteen one day. She gave it to me. So Deuteronomy 2:7, which stuck to me to this day, because I was joking with her, like when she came and like talked to me, it's like, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm like wandering in the desert. And hey, I've been wandering for a few months. I got like 40 more years to go. Yeah, then after a couple of weeks down the road, months down the road, then she wrote me this verse, which said that, the background of this verse is the Israelites were wandering in the desert, and then I can't remember who said this. Yeah, but yeah, so this 40 years, God has been with you, even in their wandering, right? When like, you feel like God's not there, he has been with you and you have lacked nothing. And it was really true. I lacked nothing during this period. I was just being this mopey, like emo kid, right? Yeah. So this was one of the verses that spurred me. And also at the same time, I have this really close group of friends, and then this guy, Guan Hua, right? He invited me to his church lah. And initially I was like, okay lah, I'll visit like once or twice, and I didn't really go. But I remember there was this one time when I was in the history honors room in uni, and I was just like trying to study, but I was feeling also like quite depressed. I was just like lying on the couch. Then it's like, oh, I don't want to do anything, and like, yeah. And I was like, I suddenly like, I don't know what spurred into me, but I was like, okay, I need to stop this. So I just texted my friend Guang Hua, hey, is there service today? And he said, yeah, there is, come. Then I just like got on my feet, and then I just left and I went to church. And it was in this church, Trinity C2C, Trinity Christian Center, that I found one of the first communities that I could really like sort of how to say, immerse in. Yeah, so this group of friends, they were really they didn't like sort of judge where I came from or what, they were just there sharing our lives together. Yeah, and I remember this. So remember when I mentioned I was serving in this CF ministry, right? So after I left, I think I always felt guilty because it was a new ministry and I kind of left it very abruptly. Yeah, and then I remember in one CG session at Trinity, the youth pastor was like, asking me like, have you forgiven yourself for it? And I think it really struck me like, how I put it, like, for me, I think I really experienced the love of God, the transformation power of God from the people. Like without all these people who speak into me and to encourage me, yeah, it'd be very hard. Yeah. Let's see, where am I? Okay, cool. So slowly but surely, I started going back to church. I attended Trinity quite regularly, especially the cell group. And then fast forward. So this is sort of how I sort of slowly came back to church and God. So when I came back, right, I guess I sort of have a better idea, like what I mentioned, like, because of these people, like church to me is really about the people and how God speaks and loves through these people, right? So when I came back, So after I met like my wife, she wasn't my wife then. We were sort of looking for a church to sort of root ourselves in, because she came from like a Chinese speaking church, and I came from like the Pai Methodist. So we didn't really want to go to each other's church, so we tried to find like a third party church. So we sort of discussed like what are the things that were important to us when we were finding a church, and then so it really is about the community, which these 3 points here. So like accountability, right? Accountability to your peers and like about your own life, and then speaking truth. So do you have people to speak truth into your lives as well? And then the support system, which is very important. Like like in uni, when my support system went for exchange, I totally crashed, right? So at this kind of like crisis moments, do you have that support group to help you? So after coming back to church, I realized that this was what was quite important to me and what I kind of look out for in a church. Yeah. But so me and my current wife, we sort of tried we were exploring a church, and there's a little bit of a speed bump in this church. So it started out pretty good. Like, the community was like, oh, very welcoming. The preaching was solid, like very word-based, very grounded. And then, we had like, the CG is quite small, I think like 6 or 7 people, but quite tight, quite open, and then seemed quite honest. But the speed bump happened was when like a semi-crisis came about. And without going too much into details, really is so what happened was, because it's a very, very small church, it's like 50 to 100 people max, not even 100 yeah. There wasn't much structure in place. There was very little conflict management experiences, and then there was very little accountability between the leaders and the people. So like the CGL was like the pastor's kid, but then if the pastor's kid does something wrong, then it's like everybody will defend him. There's no like unbiased kind of conflict management or conflict resolution. Like we just wanted the truth, right? But then to them it became like a defense. They became defensive mode. They were hurt before, so to them it's like very defensive mode. Like, no, how can you say this? No, how can you like character assassinate the pastors and family and things like that? But yeah, so this was a bit of a speed bump, which I felt like, hey, if you can't even be honest, can't even be open about issues in your life, like issues that happen in church, then I was just like, so my wife was struggling a lot because she was semi-involved in it. And then I was like, no, let's go. Stop wasting brain cells and like stress and like, yeah, let's leave. So we left, and I don't regret the decision, because I think at the end of the day, like, how do I put it nicely then, so that y'all don't leave your church? It was really a lot of stress, a lot of like sleepless nights, and it wasn't worth it. It was such a petty issue that could be resolved like by talking as an adult, like adults conversing, but they couldn't. So we left, and yeah, that was painful. So now these days, what happens? So I'll just share a bit of background. Like me and my wife, we sort of, after we got married, we rented a place with our friends, and then these 2 friends, they knew they were living for Abu Dhabi so because they are from MFA, so they didn't really root themselves in the church. So there's like 1-2 years of us living with them, and then we're like church hopping a bit, and then also like when COVID happened, then cannot go church already, so we just like stopped going church. But towards the end of 2020, Sarah and Matt, which is our ex-CGL, invited us for lunch, and then they were like, like talking to us like, what's your situation like? Then we just sharing, hey, come and join our CG and like just check it out. And so we did, and we didn't look back since. So this is our current situation. But I think what also sort of spurred us to stay and to stay committed is really yeah, because we always have real conversations like as a CG, right? And even in the small groups within the CG, right? And then it has sort of like what Chuming shared, slowly shifted to from receiving to how can we give, right? How can we be church to others? So how can we bless others? And I think one important thing is like, it's really not for the sake of like being there and taking your attendance, but really when you go to church, when you go for CG, what's the purpose of it? Yeah. So I share the same verse as what Chuming shared because we were in the same sermon. Right? So I think one of the main purpose of us like meeting up is really to stir up, and this stir up one another to love and good works. And this word stir up is from the Greek paristemos, I think, something like that, which means like to provoke and to love or to irritate lah. And if you want a role model for irritation, you just talk to Sean. He'll irritate you with truth and love. And then I think that's the key lah. Yeah, he will like a real community will always irritate you to love and to expand yourself lah. Yeah. And yes, this is all I have. So yeah.
Yeah, please, you don't know job, job quite shy. So he comes here very example. There's a I remember there was one event that we were planning at church, right? For church, like for all the YA. Then he and his wife were asked to play the worship part. And it was a recording. And then right, so they recorded. And then when they were playing it during the session, right, he was like so mortified to see himself on the screen, right, on the stage, on the projector, right, that he ran out, Then his wife was so cringe, because you see yourself playing worship, very cringe, right? He ran out. And then some time later he came back with mineral water for the people who are gonna speak on stage. Then we were also impressed, but actually the wife kind of said, no, he ran away. Then he ran away, then awkward, then he think of what to do to come back so that he won't get scolded. So thanks Josh and Shumeng. I really enjoyed your sharing. But he's a good guy. Okay, so we will have a time of discussion and then we'll come back for Q&A, okay, so that we can get our mouths and heads warming up. Okay, so I will just share these questions for the small group discussion. Okay, Michael, help me type to Daniel. Hey, Daniel, are you staying with us for the small group or you got to go already?
Yeah, I've got to go out a little bit, but I can talk to Michael over the Zoom
Okay,
chat.
Michael, you have a date with Daniel. Okay.